Hello folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me once again. You're always most welcome. Today a relatively brief tribute to Mr. Shunsaku Tamiya. I did promise I was going to do a tribute to him. I'm not going to pretend I know great detail about his life in terms of, obviously in Japan the society is a little bit different from what it is in the West. These people like to keep themselves to themselves a little bit, and even corporate Japan is a little bit like that within their businesses. But when the news came a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now I think it was, sorry, it's ended July, so it's over a month ago in fact, but when the news came that he passed away, I was very sad, and I think many other people felt the same. Here was a man who probably made the biggest single contribution to model making as a hobby that I can imagine, I can think of really. I think it's very hard to think of anyone who has made a greater and more long-lasting, significant contribution and legacy in the hobby. I think this gentleman had an obsession for quality, perfectionism, sort of like a Japanese sort of Ron Dennis type of character quite clearly. And a really nice guy from what I can glean about the people that met him. Always gave people time of day and spoke to customers, and would even speak to them at the Tamiya HQ if you're lucky enough to bump into him there. So a really nice guy, and someone who was really obsessed with his his business. Now I've got a little bit of a tribute that I've read on the Japanese website, which is in English. I thought I'd read that to you if you'll just indulge me for a second. And first of all, I'm going to just drink to his memory, if I may, because I jokingly a couple of years ago had this video where Mr. Tamiya San rings me up, which wasn't strictly true. He rang me up and I was about to do Let's Talk About Tamiya, and it was going to be the final one of my series of manufacturer videos. And of course, he rings me up and shocks me by saying, for God's sake, don't say that we're perfect because you look like an idiot and a fanboy. You must be honest and tell the truth. We have made mistakes, And of course I talked about the Sea Harrier in the Let's Talk About Tamiya video. But I'm not going to repeat what we've seen before. I'm just going to go into, we've got a few examples in front of us. One or two that you've maybe not seen as much of. Perhaps some of my slightly older and slightly ropier examples of my kits that I've built. But a couple of things talking about innovation that Mr. Tamiya brought to the industry. And why we're going to miss him. So anyway, I'm just going to have got some rosé here. I'm just going to have a quick swig of this. So, cheers Mr. Tamiya, may he rest in peace. Real loss to the industry. And literally a legend in his own lifetime, which isn't easy to achieve. So, sir, my greatest respects to you. Cheers. Yeah, so I'll just move this and I'll just read this to you because I think you'll find it interesting. I've got a few examples of finished kits, and of course I've got some kits in their boxes here. I've got a classic Panther here, which is almost at the beginning of the real growth of Tamiya. But let me just phrase it for you from this little bit of research I did, which was quite interesting. So I'll read it verbatim as it is. It says, Shunsaku Tamiya, the former president and chairman of the Tamiya Corporation, passed away on the 18th of July. His death was announced on July the 21st, with funeral services attended by his family and close friends. Mr. Tamiya led the transformation of Tamiya into a world-renowned manufacturer of high-precision plastic model kits, radio control vehicles and motorised mini four-wheel drive racers. He joined the company founded by his father originally as a transport firm and then switched to supplying timber after World War II. Just after the war he left university, joined his father's business. This brought about an expansion into wooden models. This is how it started, in wooden models, not plastic. And he goes on to say, primarily these models were ships and aeroplanes. However, after a fire destroyed the company's timber supply, it decided to focus primarily on the model side of the business. Not long after this, plastic technology improved and began taking over the world's model kit market. Shunsaku Tamiya spearheaded the shift to Paramo, a portmanteau of plastic and model. So it's like an abbreviation to mix the two in your mind. And in the process, changed the industry forever. He helped fuel enthusiasm for cars as well as other types of transportation for generations of children and adults alike. Not much difference here, really. Now, there's a very important kit which I'm going to show you. The car models amongst you might not appreciate this, but let me just zoom you in on this, because I think it's important that you do see it. If you just bear with me a second. This was the sort of kit that made a huge difference and was quite historic. The Porsche 934, so it's a 911 934 type, the Turbo RSR, so it's a race car, if you will, a rally sport racer. And it says, Shunsaku was responsible for creating Tamiya's signature branding and the reputation for high quality. He invited his brother Masao to create the Twin Stars logo that was featured on all the box art, and they hired illustrators to create the white box effect that then made the Tamiya logo stand out so effectively in contrasting with the box art of other model making companies. Most of all, he was the driving force in the unmatched precision Tamiya kits they've come now to be celebrated for. Famously, now this is very interesting, which I didn't know. Okay, famously, while creating the model for the 1976 Porsche 934 Turbo RSR that I've just shown you, Tamiya San sent his designers to Porsche's Zuffenhausen factory several times to get the measurements and details just right. Remember, this is long before 3D scanning. Everything had to be photographed and measured and drawings taken. However, despite several repeated trips, there were still grave doubts about the kit's accuracy. So, Mr. Tamiya bought a Porsche 911 and completely disassembled it to get every single detail correct. This is the interesting part. Eventually, the car was put back together again. Shunsaku Tamiya then personally ferried F1 driver Jody Scheckter and his wife to the 1976 Japanese Grand Prix. Now that's the race, the critical race, which was held at Mount Fuji circuit with James Hunt versus Niki Lauda, featured in the Rush movie. And of course Niki Lauda pulled out after one lap in the torrential rain. They do have some terrible rainstorms there. They're the same in 2008? 2007. But the reason I say it's important, because something that a lot of people will have missed is, at the beginning of the story I told you that Mr. Tamiya was working for his father in their timber business. Well, there's a crossover here, because here is Jody Scheckter's car, the kit that they eventually produced, which is what explains why he was so keen on this particular kit. That is the 1976 Tyrrell P34, driven by Scheckter. And here's the important part of the story. Ken Tyrrell, just like Mr. Tamiya's father, originally started business as a timber merchant, exactly what Mr. Tamiya's dad was doing. So obviously they felt there was a bit of a synergy here, like a crossover and a real symbionce between them. So Ken Tyrrell turned his business from timber merchanting into Formula One cars, and Tamiya turned their business from timber merchanting into model making. So isn't that incredible? That's absolutely amazing. The fact that he actually drove him to the racetrack in that car, you know. Never knew that. Very, very interesting stuff. And it says, of course, he then basically, the company went on from strength to strength. And I'll give you I'm not an expert of the history of the business, but one or two things that stand out in my mind I'll talk about in a minute. It says in 2018, Shunsaku Tamiya was given a Lifetime Achievement Award in the Japanese Media Arts Festival for his contributions to the hobby industry. His contribution to the imaginations of petrol heads, however, will live on for many years to come. And of course they're very famous for these beautiful Formula One cars, like the ones I've shown you that I've built as well. He was 90 years old when he passed away. Rest in peace, Mr. Tamiya. Isn't that interesting? So, to to talk about a couple of things which strike me. If you think back, some of you, if you're old enough, this is one of the models that was actually a bit of a turning point in their history. Tamiya, I became first aware of them when my older brother was making their figures and tanks and things around about, well, the early 70s, 70 to 73, sort of that time. And then in 74, they released this model, which is now still around today. You can still buy it in even places like Hobbycraft. That's where I bought this one. Now, just want to say, this is not one of my... This is built years ago, I think 15, 20 years ago. So it's not my finest build or anything, so I'm not trying to show off here. But you get a feel for the sheer quality. So this is 1974, but look at the beauty of this. It's a Panther tank, a German Panther from World War II, and also we've got some more modern iterations. If you look very, very closely on the back of the tank here, there's a couple of extras. We've got my cats, my former cats. We've got sadly all passed away now, but just at the back there, you see the pussycat standing on the ammunition box. That's Purdy. And then further into the foreground here, it's almost falling off, we've got another cat sitting on an ammunition box. Show you. There we go. And that's Scampy, my other former cat. So I painted these cats up to be very accurate, genuinely accurate to, from photographs and from memory of my cats that sadly passed away. Tribute to them. And that's a more recent development in the last sort of 10, 15 years. But these kits are a very affordable kit, this one. And let's see if I can turn it without turning the turret too much. A bit careful, obviously. But a really nice kit. And it comes with rubber band tracks, but really good quality. You can buy this for around about £15 to £17 in the shops. It's an absolute bargain, and it still stands up well today. You can build this basically in a day stroke weekend quite easily. Certainly build and paint it in a weekend. Doesn't take any huge effort. There's no photo etch on this one included, nor does it need any, quite frankly. It's a really nice kit. And this was a turning point. This was the start of a sort of a new generation. So they'd had they had 1/25th scale kits in the 1970s. Some of you might remember these. They're still around today. These 1/25th scale armour kits. And then they brought out the 1/35ths in the early 70s. And this was the start of the regeneration of Tamiya becoming a market leader, you could say. And they brought out the Tiger, the early production Tiger. And you've seen one of that. I'm sure it was on my Greatest Hits album. And then they brought out the King Tiger and lots of other stuff just followed suit, And it made them, very popular. They're very easy kits to put together. And then, of course, they brought out in the 80s. They brought out these aircraft like the P-51 Mustang, the Spitfire, the 109, Corsair, Thunderbolt, and these you can still buy today in 48 scale. And they cost today they're only £20-25 tops. Very good value kits. These kits were, and very, very. Very easy to build. I mean, I built the Thunderbolt, and I said it was one of the easiest to build kits I've ever had. The P-47D, the Razorback. Unbelievable. Then they came up with things like this Mosquito. Any of you thought that I've just finished my Mosquito? No, this is the old one. So this is the 48 scale Mark 6 Mosquito, and here we have it. This is another cracking kit, I've got to be honest. And this you can pick up for about £30-33, absolute max, probably a lot less than that in some shops. And it's just a really, really nice model. I'm sorry if you get any focus issues with the background, that's slightly inevitable today, I'm afraid. So this is the fighter bomber version of the Mosquito. They also have the Mark 4/5, the bomber version. But look at this, I mean, again, it's not. There's a little bit of silvering here. There's a little bit of sin by me errors. But as I say, they're not my finest builds. These are built some time ago, at least 10 to 15 years ago minimum. But just look at that kit. It's got a real presence to it. Very, very nice indeed. Sorry about the rain in the background, by the way. We've got some real. The summer's clearly over. But aren't they beautiful kits? And so many of you will be nodding and saying, "I've got that. I've got that." and this is certainly one not to miss. If you want value for money, a really decent size of kit with lots of extras. It's got the bombs in there, the bomb bay. I don't think there's any aftermarket on this at all. It's just straight from the box. A really nice Mosquito. Then, so that was about, what was that about? Late 90s, mid-late 90s I think. Roughly the same time we got this, which is the ME260. Be careful with this. I haven't handled it for a while. I don't think I've shown this for quite a while. So this is the ME262. And this is the one that's got the Kettencraft rad towing it, which is one of these double sets. And I'll show you another one of those in a minute, actually, that we've got in the background. Yeah, it's a again really nice 262. I don't think my paint job on this is the finest I've ever done. But again, that was built 15 years ago, so. But very, very nice indeed. You get a pilot with it as well that's leaning out, holding open the pilot's leaning out and holding open the canopy. You know, you've got the gun bay. It's a really, really good kit. All the detail you need is there. Goes together like an absolute dream. Precision engineering from Tamiya again. And that's a really corking little model. And as I mentioned, it comes with its towing. I'll put this on my hand, it'll be easier for you to see it. The Kettencraft rad, or the crad, sometimes call them for short. And there you go. Isn't that nice? Yeah. They're proper little models, 48 scale, superb detail, absolutely brilliant. And they look great in a diorama. Of course, as you know, I've got a whole diorama with all these FW190s and 109s and things. Everything's together. Really beautiful model. So that's another one you may not have seen. Then, a couple that you may have seen. I think most of you have seen the Spitfire. We'll bring that in. I want to talk about the Spitfire for a particular reason, which I will quickly explain. Let's put all my bits of 262 over there. Now, so if you wind the clock forward, I mentioned about, you know, they're bringing out these very good, very easy to build kits, very popular, popularity takes off, you know, they're flash free in the 1990s, absolutely brilliant engineering, and I'll show you the twin set later when I've got the models safely out of the way. But then wind forward into the new century, and in 2009, this is when Tamiya went up almost into top gear, let's say 5th gear, and they brought out this product, which is the 32nd scale. It's the Mark 9C Spitfire, which many of you will have already seen, I think, from me. But there's a couple of things about this that really did, they were a game changer, a mould breaker, you could say. And one of the main things is these cowls, which are actually on the, I'm desperate not to do any damage to this, the cowls which are on the engine cowl, for example, and they manufactured them ultra thin. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to show this properly, but look how thin they are. They are absolutely scale-like in thickness, and this was the first time that you'd really had this. It's probably easier if I show you the side panel. And you've got a very, very detailed, beautiful engine with it. Really, really good value proposition. You know, this came out and it was about £99, £95 thereabouts. So bear in mind that's what Qatari are charging today for a model that has no engine at all. This comes with the Merlin, but again, here's where the game changer element comes into it. There's two things about the kit that are particularly unique. These panels, you can see if I turn it on its edge, just how thin they really are. That's about 1.5 mils thin, I reckon. It's so thin, and it makes it look so perfectly in scale. Really, really nice. And we'd never seen that quite like that before. You know, we'd had 24 scale from Airfix and people like that, but it was always a bit clunky, you know. This is a real first. And the other thing that was unique was the undercarriage. They gave you a stand, a very robust stand, and they gave you an undercarriage which is actually screwed in but can be quickly removed and replaced with the retracted wheels. And here is the auxiliary fuel tank. You remove that, and it goes on its stand, and you can have it in flight. So they really engineered in lots of interesting things. And then they did the same with the Mustang and the Corsair, etc., where they had these magnets. So you've got absolutely got these magnets they introduced then, especially noticeable on the Mustang, I've got to say. And the little panels are held on by little tiny magnets. Very clever stuff indeed. Really, really good. Some sort of things that, multimedia engineering of a level we haven't seen before. Of course, they come up with some. This is not a new one, but I've just dropped my own fuel tanks into the back seat. It's been untidy of me, but many of you, if you want a simple model to build, you can go for some of these lovely classics again. For the military vehicles, you've got this lovely Willys Jeep. Here's a really nice one. And you can build this in a day basically. It's just nothing to it really. And they're very, very beautifully moulded. Beautifully moulded. It comes with a figure as well. You've got the actual windshield. It folds down to reveal the Garand rifle. It's like its clip holster on the front of the scuttle. Or you can put it up again. There's also an engine in there somewhere. If we just remove it, there we go. I think it's got the Ford engine, hasn't it? Ford engine in there. All very nice, Simple kits, but just there's no fuss to them. You don't have to fight them. This is the thing about Tamiya. He created an accessibility in these models that you don't get in some others, because they are buildable without having to be a master builder. And that, well, I built it, so there's the proof. Self-deprecating as ever. But you know what I mean. It's on your side, and you can concentrate on things like the weathering and the finishing and the painting, and put it into dioramas, and you don't have to fight and get frustrated and stressed, and be using lots of filler. None of these models I've just shown you, not one of them has any filler in it at all. Not one of them. So that tells you the quality of these kits really. So anyway, winding forward a little bit further, everybody by now, by the time you got to things like the Mustang, and then the Corsair came out in 2013, I think it was, and then in the autumn of 2014, they brought out the Mosquito, which I'm now working on 10 years later, or 11 years from the date it was released. And again, there was another quantum jump, and something particularly interesting I'm going to show you now. So this is the sprue. It's sprue J. I'm going to zoom you in on this. Something again which Tamiya, being engineers, sort of engineers first and modelers second, you could argue, but maybe 50-50 really, because they really have this passion. Now, if we have a look at this, get it to focus, it might be a help. If we have a look at this, we've got here the wheels and the tyres basically. Now look at the tyres here. They've come up with something completely innovative that we've never seen before. So what we've got like a central section of almost a hub of the wheel and tyre, and then to avoid a seam line, which you get even on resin sometimes, and you certainly get it in injection moulded plastic, they've created little sections, including the flat section here, where it's got the weight on wheels on this one. You've got the tread sections, and you build them up, and they are beautifully shaped, and you build them up, and they all lock on into these little plugs here, these little pins, and you just build up your tyre tread, and it's in what's that, 7, 8 sections? 9, 10, I think it's 10 sections. 10 sections make up one tyre, and this is one sprue of 2, to create a completely seamless and really quite innovative and groundbreaking design. Something that nobody else has thought of. We've never seen anything like that before. And to do this on a mainstream kit at this price point, it suddenly means that, whereas, I've got to be honest with you, on my Spitfire and my Mustang, I think on both of those I went to resin wheels and tyres. Suddenly that becomes completely unnecessary. This gets rid of that problem. You suddenly have a perfect looking plastic tyre with no seam lines to worry about at all, and it's all done in the engineering stage, at the design stage by Tamiya. Absolutely fantastic. Now, since 2015, when this came on the market fully, we haven't really seen any more kits like this from them, which is what quite a few people complain about, because they've sort of seemed to have... There's been a lot of issues in Japan with the economy, and profitability is very important for a business. And I think they see that their radio controlled car business is their primary money maker, not model kits. Probably because they see that the market's probably shrinking slightly now, which is something that worries me, and I've talked about it in my recent chats with Jason on model kit stuff and people like that. So, you know, it is a concern, but that, I think, is the reason that they have not perhaps invested in more of this kind of innovation. But that is true. Right in my hand, that sprue is probably one of the ultimate evolutions of the model kit that we've seen, along with the Spitfire and these very feather-light, super gossamer thin panels for the cowlings. Absolutely astonishing stuff. And we're not, you know, we'd like to see more of that, and we haven't really had any of it in recent years. So it has sort of dried up, this fantastic innovation. I hope that will change. I guess it depends on whether Tamiya think it's worth it or not. But when I saw this, I thought, wow, this is epic. You know, again, and you do see this in fairness from people like Airfix as well. Young Paramjit, the designer at Airfix, he comes up with ideas like this. Excuse me, using jigs and thinking about the kit. Not just spewing out some plastic and letting you sort it out, your problem. No, these guys have engineered this to perfection, and they know that it's going to go together perfectly. And it's like the old adage with Tamiya is, if it's not going together right, it's you, it's not the kit. Only in a couple of cases have we had problems with. I know that Sea Harrier isn't great, and I had one or two minor issues with that Spitfire, the 48 scale Mark 1. But it's very rare. It's very, very rare indeed. I mean, I did that motorbike, and that was probably the most challenging kit I've ever done. When I say challenging, I don't mean problematic though. Challenging because everything was so tiny. And there's so many little teensy tiny parts. Building the chain, you know, building the suspension, building the spokes, because all the additional sets. And this is something else that Tamiya have sort of pioneered in a way, having these upgrade sets, like an aftermarket set, but made by them. So, but the difference is that the Tamiya sets, as was the case with that Honda motorcycle, the RC166, you know it will fit. And again, you need to turn your personal levels of skill up to 11, which is what I had to do with that one. I think that was the most challenging kit without faults that I've ever built. No faults in the kit. Just, you know, don't drop these parts. You need to be very sober, you need to be very refreshed, lots of rest, your eyesight needs to be good, you must have your best glasses, you've got to tick every box before you even start, yeah? Because it's very challenging and there's such tiny parts, and you've got to concentrate on the instructions which are there to help you. Don't try and jump ahead, don't try and be clever, follow their instruction and it'll be fine, and it was in the end, but that was a challenge. That was a challenge. I've never been so pushed so far. For me, it was like watchmaking, that kit. Absolutely incredible kit. Another magnificent piece of engineering. But there you go. That's what Mr. Tamiya created. He created a business whereby... Did I just drop something there? Was that just my jacket? He created a business whereby, you know, he wanted to be proud of the product. And you know, here we've got some of the recent ones, some not so recent. Obviously the Tyrrell does go back to 1977, that kit. Here's an older one though, not the Mercedes. Let me just move this out of the way for a second. Here's an older one from the 90s. So it's the File, the Arrow. This is the Dornier 335. That's the pull me, push you design, where it's got an engine front and rear. And this is when they started this idea, which is now quite common, I suppose, with some manufacturers. It's what ICM do. Well, you've got combinations of kits, and they've got Kubelwagen, and you'll have all seen this in my collection. These two characters with the map, this pilot with the map, officer coming to give him some briefing, and the Kubelwagen. Well, I've got those already in my cabinet. And then you've got this beautiful 335, which I haven't got. I'm going to build this one day, for sure. Another really excellent combo set with a fundamentally excellent kit, just in the right scale. It's fair size, it's not a small aircraft, this. And you've got a couple of schemes. I mean, the only criticism that people generally have with these kits from Tamiya, sometimes we do find that the decals are a bit on the thick side. That can be a bit challenging. That's probably the one weak point that they really do have. But their cars and their motorbikes, I think nobody can touch them. I haven't built this yet, obviously, but another one I intend to build, the Sauber, the 1989 Le Mans winning race machine that also won the championship. You've got the very latest kit here, two latest kits in fact, in the last 12 months. The 72nd scale from last year, the 72nd scale F-35B, the jump jet Lightning used by the US and Italy and Britain. And then the very latest kit that I've got certainly, which is the Porsche 911 GT3 RS. A beautiful, beautiful kit, and again engineered to absolute perfection. By the way, there's reviews of all these kits. You can go and look in my channel, do a search. You can see the full review of each one of these in the last couple of years, you know. So there you go. I didn't want to sort of bang on too long today. Just wanted to really pay my respects to Mr. Tamiya. I think that you'd be very hard pressed to name anybody else, you know, in the business of model making who has ever contributed as much as he has, and raised the game of his competitors. Think about Tsukimura. I doubt they'd exist if Mr. Tamiya had not been producing these kits in the way that he was doing it. I don't think you'd have Airfix producing the quality that they've been doing most of their kit. You know, when they have these clever jigs and things, that's definitely a nod to Tamiya, isn't it? Innovative ideas creeping in there as well, which is great. Qatari, wingnut wings, very much taking a lead from the quality of Tamiya. Again, beautiful, fantastic instructions and great design, flash-free mouldings, all following the example that was set by Tamiya. So I think we owe this gentleman probably a bigger debt than we realise, to be honest, because I think he turned the industry up to 11, as I said, as a sort of cliche, I know, but really, in terms of quality, you know, without Tamiya, I think this industry would be in a much worse place, not as popular as it is, not as enjoyed as it is. You know, if you've got youngsters aged sort of 7 years plus, there's probably a Tamiya kit you can find that they could build. And that's not necessarily true of all the other manufacturers, I don't think. So there we have it, really. I just wanted to say that it was very sad news to hear his passing. And I wanted to do my bit just to talk about one or two of the things that have caught my eye and some of the kits I built just here, just a small, tiny selection. Those of you that do follow my channel will know a couple of weeks ago I did this greatest hits video, which I've talked about subsequently, and people have come forward and said, wow, some of those are epic builds, you know. Now they were not exclusively Tamiya builds, but most of them were Tamiya, but that does not represent the contents of my cabinet. So there's an important sort of message here, if you like, a subliminal message. I chose for that video what I thought were the best builds that I've done. But I think I said afterwards that there was about a quarter of my builds are Tamiya, quarter's Airfix, you've got a quarter that are Matchbox, and then a quarter of everything else like ICM, and who else have we got? Hasegawa, various other manufacturers, Revell, Eduard, making up the other quarter. And yet, probably 65% of the kits that were my greatest hits were Tamiya ones. Now what that tells you is simply this. I didn't select them because they were Tamiya for that video to try and promote them in any way at all. It shows though that those kits are the ones I've enjoyed the most and have been such high quality that, like the motorbike, like the Mustang, like the Spitfire in front of me, they've made me raise my game because they are such a beautiful product, so exquisitely engineered that I felt, case in point in front of me, I've really got to go the extra mile. You know, just slapping some paint. No, that's not good enough. We're going to do it properly. We're going to do some pre-shading and post-shading. We're going to do some weathering and da-da-da. And make me rise up to the level that they're at, because you're not fighting it. You're not getting to the stage of doing these things near the end where you are frustrated and you're sick of the model. Think Kinetic Sea Harrier. Yeah, does this ring any bells? When you're thinking, I just want this to end. You don't feel like that with these kits. You're thinking, this has been great. You know, now I'm going to do this, I'm going to add that. So, to prove my point, which is a great case in point right in front of me, just zooming in one more time here. So look at the engine on the Spitfire. It is covered with all sorts of extras that were not in the box, in fact. It's got extra wiring, it's got extra tubing, it's got extra piping, it's got the Rolls-Royce logos there, the nameplates on the engine. And these are all things where I felt that perhaps Tamiya could have done a little more. Not a criticism particularly. I just thought this is so good, what they have done is so beautiful looking, that it merits doing more. And I'll give you another example that's not me. A couple of days ago, some of you will have seen this, there's the Ayrton Senna McLaren MP46, the one that I've got. Many of you have been very complimentary about that. But I recently saw one done by somebody else, I think it was a Japanese gentleman, and he'd gone for all the aftermarket sets on it. Ooh, okay. And it just looks so real, you know, with all this finite wiring and sensors on it and all sorts of things. Super fine detailing. And again, because it's fundamentally so sound as an engineering concept, as a product, this guy has done the same as what I've done here, and he's gone the extra mile, raised up his level, raised his game, because it's such, the fundamentals are so good and you enjoy them so much, makes you want to put the icing on the cake. And you don't always feel like that, certainly I don't, when it's a horrible donkey dog kit that has frustrated you, fought you at every opportunity, you know, like out of the Sea Harrier. And you sometimes just think, I just want this done and I want to go on to something that I'm going to enjoy. I can tell you, all the ones in front of me, I enjoy building every single one of these, and that's the story. They bring out the joy, these kits, in a way, consistently, in a way that other manufacturers can't quite match. Some get close, you know, Ethics can get close, Zukimura get close, Qatari, Stroke Wing Nut Wings certainly got close and do get close. But nobody can do it quite as consistently, perhaps, in quite as reliable way, at a sensible price. They're not always cheap. Spitfire's now £120 and that Mosquito is £220 today, thanks to exchange rates changing the prices up. So they're not cheap, but you get such value from these products. I think that is a wonderful legacy that this man has left behind. I think he knew that. He was well aware of that in his lifetime. So loved, you know, his products are so loved, and he knew that. So, you know, he passed away knowing that he'd done something very worthwhile, and we, so many of us, really enjoyed the products. And I can't imagine a world really today where I would be in this hobby with my YouTube channel and extolling the hobby in quite the same way if Tamiya had not existed. I think it's unlikely I'd be doing this, and whether I'd still be in the hobby is questionable as well. That is a fundamental contribution that this man has made, and many of you watching this probably nodding and thinking, well, I feel that way too. So what a wonderful man, what a wonderful legend, living legend, and now sadly he's gone, but his legacy lives on. Let's hope that Tamiya can get maybe some more investment and maybe on the model kit side for our part of the hobby can give us some more treats. You know, I do feel that at the moment it's a little bit crumbs from the table. Let's hope in the future they can invest a bit more to really enshrine his legacy, so that we can enjoy it for decades and centuries to come, because I think this is a company that's got legs, you know. Anyway, finally, just have another sip just to toast Mr. Tamiya's memory. Sir, rest in peace. I honour your memory. I'm sure everybody would like to sort of have a quick sip just to say we toast you and thank you for everything you did. Mr. Tamiya San, thank you. Well, that's it for today, folks. I just wanted to, you know, put my sort of four-penneth in and talk about somebody very special. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Give us a like. Don't forget to give us a 10 out of 10. Ding the notification bell, because there's a few people having problems where they're being undinged by YouTube, I think. And I hope to have more interesting things for you coming in the very near future. Until next time, bit of a sad one today, but also joyous one, I think, to sort of celebrate such a wonderful company and a wonderful man. So thank you to him, and thank you to you for watching and sharing it with me. Till next time, thanks very much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and bye for now.